Buckle up, folks, as we are back on the road for the first time in 2024, off to our first gaming market of the year here at Leeds Video Game Market.
Game Picker! Building the game room! Run tricks! Live game hunting! Oh yeah!
And again, folks, and welcome back to a very special episode, as today we are heading off on the long road up to the north, up to Leeds for Leeds Video Game Market. And there's something about these video game markets. These are the places you find the very best stuff for your collection, and fingers crossed we're going to find something truly amazing to add to my amazing and ever-growing video game collection. When it comes to video game markets, it is all about patience. As soon as you go in, you can be blown away by some of the things you will see. You will see things you have never seen before. But here's the thing, in my case, I do not have infinite funds. When I go to video game markets, I have a budget in mind, and I try loosely to stick to that budget. So video game market shopping for me is all about patience. But trust me, when I see that must-have item, I must have it. If you enjoyed this episode, please hit the like button and please subscribe, as I put new videos out every Saturday live at 5, as well as bonus content throughout the week, and I really want you folks along for the ride. Now, let's hit the road up to the north to Leeds Video Game Market. Now, I live in the fine city of Norwich, and Leeds is around 170 miles or about a 4-hour drive away. So it was a 5 a.m. start on Saturday morning to get to the frankly beautiful city of Leeds. I haven't been to Leeds for a very, very long time, and the last time I visited I didn't get to see much sightseeing, and I was blown away by this part of Leeds. It was absolutely beautiful, but nothing prepared me for the crowds and the queues for the early bird entry to Leeds Gaming Market. There was 800 people who had bought early entry tickets, and honestly, you could tell it was going to be an absolutely massive event, and I was chomping at the bit to get in. Straight off the bat, here's a date for your diaries, May 11th, the Doncaster Gaming Market. So I'm already excited for that one. But today is all about the Leeds Video Game Market, and look at the crowds. This was just after 11 o'clock, just after early bird entry. It was gonna be a very, very busy day, but I was ready to get stuck in. Straight in, and the first stall that we visited was ran by none other than legendary YouTuber Ed Hunt. So I wanted to see what he had found on his hunts to sell here at Leeds Video Game Market. And straight away, there was some quality boxed retro here. We are talking boxed N64, including an empty box, but a box nonetheless for Resident Evil 2. This was very tempting, but honestly, I think it's going to be really hard to find the instructions for that one. I do have the actual cartridge for that game, but not the box. Now, this is a game I've been on the lookout for a long while, Super Star Wars. It is one of my favourite trilogies of games on the SNES, and honestly, if I'm going to find a decent copy of these games, this is the place I'm most likely to find them. When I go to gaming markets, I am looking for that one specific item. And here's the thing, when you're at gaming markets, it's all about patience. You have to kind of browse, take it all in. It's a difficult balance because it's very easy to jump straight in and start grabbing stuff and buying stuff straight away, but you have to kind of be tactful. You don't want to wait too long because some of the best items will sell very quickly, but you kind of don't want to splurge your budget on the very first thing you find. It is a delicate balance, and it's all about patience, but that is one of the most challenging things about shopping at the gaming markets. This was pretty cool, this copy of Kid Icarus Uprising for the Nintendo 3DS. Honestly, mark my words, in the next few years, the Nintendo 3DS prices are going to go absolutely through the roof. Much like back in the day when you can pick up boxed SNES games super cheap, these are commanding a higher price. And here's the thing, when you're at a gaming market, you are going to be paying a premium because these are the rare items that are normally in incredible condition. Like this, the condition of these SNES games was absolutely amazing. And honestly, this is what I'm looking for when I'm at gaming markets, the rare mint retro, because this is the best place to find it. This definitely won't be the last time I say this episode, but here is something you don't see very often: the Master System Classics games. They're in these weird brown kind of cases, and honestly, I've seen these about 3 times ever, so to see a couple of the games here was a really, really big surprise, and honestly a nice surprise, and a set I'm really tempted to collect. Now, I love the weird and the wonderful, and this definitely falls into that category, the NES cleaning kit. Such a random thing to find at a gaming market, but I just love the weird and the wonderful items like that. Constantly on the lookout for a copy of Primal Rage for the Mega Drive. I just never seem to find one in decent condition. It's not the most expensive game, it's not the rarest game, but I just never seem to find one complete and in good condition and at the right price. Nice to see some good handhelds here, including some really nice Tiger Electronics. This right here is exactly what I love about video game markets like the one here in Leeds. You just get the very best games. Yes, you may be paying a premium for these games, but in what other place can you find this caliber of retro? We are talking boxed NES games, Sega Saturn games, even Virtual Boy games. This is the definition of everything which I love about gaming fairs, and it's just the fact you can find anything. Like, look at these. I absolutely love the silver case NES games and also the silver case of the Sega Game Gear. But this is one of the craziest things that you're going to see today. This Killer Instinct double pack with a watch, commanding a whopping price, but honestly I doubt I'll ever see this item ever again. And here's the thing, gaming markets are all about finding those grail items, those items you can find nowhere else. For example, just look at this collection of Game Boy and Game Boy Advance games. All of these are absolutely mint, and honestly, if this Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Fall of the Foot Clan had been complete with a manual for 40 quid, I would have probably picked this one up. I'm aiming to buy all of the Turtles games eventually, but I did pass on this one today just because it didn't have the instructions. Because here's a big thing, when you are looking for boxed retro, you are looking for them to be complete. This Tasmania was super cool, but unfortunately this was the NTSC version, so I did pass on this one. But the absolutely iconic artwork on some of these SNES games is such a thing of absolute beauty. I love the SNES artwork. I think for me, 50% of what makes SNES games brilliant is that artwork. And the same can be said for Mega CD games, because honestly, we are seeing Mega CD games less and less, and I'm just a sucker for punishment. I love to try and collect for the weird and the obscure, and honestly, it doesn't get much more obscure than the Sega CD. The weird console that Sega decided to put out very near the end of the Mega Drive, but I still love it. Much like I love looking for boxed N64 games. I was very lucky to pick up a majority of my boxed N64 collection a couple of years ago when it was much cheaper, but I am looking to fill the gaps in my collection with games such as Duke Nukem 3D, which I really need, Castlevania, which I wish I'd bought years ago, and other games such as that. Same as the Sega Saturn, I was lucky enough to pick up most of my Saturn games a few years ago because, much like most of the retro game market, especially after and during lockdown, the prices have spiked. But here is the thing, you can get some absolute deals at these gaming markets. Like, look at some of these box consoles for just over 100 quid. You can have some of the most iconic consoles of all time with some of the greatest artwork of all time in your collection. And when it comes to great artwork, again, I just love boxed N64 games, especially these kind of official Nintendo ones with that kind of black banner that's kind of a bit of a throwback to the SNES. It just has some absolutely fantastic artwork, and honestly, the N64 was the first console I ever truly fell in love with, and that's why I just love collecting for it boxed. Here we have the Atari Jaguar, one of my most wanted consoles, which ironically I have never played an Atari Jaguar, but just look how cool it looks. The black, the red, the futuristic design, the crazy looking controller. I just have to have one day. Going back, there was a lot of boxed SNES games here, and honestly, this is one of my collections which I really want to cherry pick the very best titles. I want my SNES box collection to be all killer and no filler, and I just love, as I said earlier, these Konami silver boxes. There's just something so incredibly satisfying about seeing these lined up. Konami was absolutely on fire in the 16-bit era. Couldn't be beaten. Some more Mega CD games here, and here is the thing, because this is quite an obscure system and quite hard to find games for, the games are getting more expensive, but there's a few titles I really want, like Dungeons & Dragons Eye of the Beholder looks absolutely awesome. I am a massive D&D nerd and that game looks super duper cool. Jaguar is a game you can normally pick up for about 20 quid, so one I will pick up eventually down the road, but there's just some Mega CD titles that I just need, such as this one. Dungeon Keeper 2 looks absolutely incredible, but honestly, this was super cool. Biohazard 2 for the Japanese N64, obviously known as Resident Evil 2 here in the PAL region, but again, this artwork is absolute fire. At £140, it is quite an expensive piece, but very cool. Here we have it though, folks. One of the coolest, most expensive, rare items that I saw at Leeds Gaming Market, the Jaguar CD complete in the box. And speaking of complete in the box, here is something you don't see every day, a Super Game Boy for the Super Nintendo complete in the box, and this stall had some absolutely incredible boxed items, including a Sega Mega Drive 32X complete in the box, and this incredible Bayonetta 2 Wii U box set. And I've got to admit, as a massive Bayonetta fan, I was very, very, very tempted by this, and for that price, it nearly came over me. But speaking of boxed games, this game is the top of my hit list at the moment. Teenage Mutant Hero Turtles for the NES. Now, unfortunately, this one wasn't in quite perfect condition, so I did pass. It's a fairly common game, but I'm looking for a minty copy of that one. And I'm also on the lookout at the moment for a Game Genie for two reasons. Firstly, retro games are hard. There, I went and said it. Secondly, I am looking to build the Sega Tower of Power, and I need one of these for the Mega Drive. So I did pass on this one, even though it did come with a super cool Game Genie compilation book with all of the codes so you can get all the cheats for all of these amazing retro games. But the hunt continues for the Mega Drive version of the Game Genie. So back to the N64 and an absolutely fantastic first-person shooter there, Hexen. A lot of people don't think about first-person shooters when it comes to the N64, but honestly, it was a golden age of a lot of these games that up until that point only been on the PC. If you've been a fan of the channel for a while, you will know that I love wrestling, and I also, of course, love wrestling games. And little known facts, this game right here, WCW Backstage Assault, never got a PAL release for the N64 as far as I know. So this kind of homebrew version for the PAL N64 was very tempted. It was very, very cool. If you did not know, my first console growing up after the Game Boy was the Master System, so I would always have a super soft spot for the Master System because all my friends had Mega Drives, but I had the Master System. That's why I was very tempted to pick this up, which I pick up in a minute, the Master System converter for the Mega Drive. So yes, you can play your Master System games on your Mega Drive. It looks super cool sat on top of the Mega Drive 1. I do have the converter for the Mega Drive 2, so I did pass this time, but I just love how Sega was kind of changing the game back in the 90s, where you could just play anything on anything. I love the converters, I love the Mega CD, I just love the craziness of Sega in that generation. Not just the games, but the consoles and the peripherals. Like I said at the start of this video, when it comes to hunting at gaming markets, I am very picky. I am waiting for that must-have item. As I said, I have a finite budget and I did not want to blow it until I saw the item I had to take away with me, and this was tempting right here. This copy of Spider-Man for the SNES with quite an eye-watering price tag, but with some of these rare games, you are going to have to pay the premium, and this is the best place to find stuff you do not find anywhere else, such as the Sega Multi-Mega. I think I've seen one of these in person twice, maybe 3 times in my entire life. They are super duper rare. I thought I was onto a winner here. I thought I'd found a box Game Genie. This one was for the Game Gear, and I was again tempted, but I'm holding out for the Mega Drive version, as honestly, I don't even own a Game Gear. I think I had one a couple of years ago and the capacitors went before I replaced them, and sadly I sold it for parts. Now this is another thing I love about gaming markets. I said to the owner of this store I was looking for a Game Genie, and he pulled me out a Game Genie boxed, complete, but sadly this time for the NES. We had seen the Super Nintendo version, the NES version, even the Game Gear version. I just had to believe eventually I'd find one for the Mega Drive. So the hunt continued, and hidden underneath the TV Boy, throwback to anyone who remembers that one, was some really cool PS1 games and a PS1 game with the Blockbuster rental case. If you ever rented games from Blockbuster back in the day, you will remember those blue cases. They were the things that Friday and Saturday nights were made of. They were the absolute dream. Going to Blockbuster, hiring 1, 2, maybe if you're lucky, 3 games, and just playing them to death over the weekend. When we went to Blockbuster back in the day and we hired games, we got our money's worth. If you couldn't complete that game in the weekend, you had failed, and that was what it was all about. You get a few mates round and smash it. One thing that absolutely blew me away about Leeds gaming market was the amount of retro Nintendo cardboard. I don't think I've ever been anywhere which had a higher concentration of NES, SNES and N64 games. There were so many. I was absolutely blown away by the massive selection of high-priced retro cardboard, including, hiding at the back here, some of the very heavy hitters in absolutely mint condition. And honestly, I'd love to add them all. But speaking of retro Nintendo cardboard, here we have an item which I have waited almost 30 years to add to my collection, because I've been waiting for the right place, the right time, the right condition, and could today finally be, after 30 years, when I grab this. Yeah, buddy. How much have you got on your Super Scope? 25. Is he yellowed at all? Ah, perfect. You'll have to wait around to the end of this video to find out if I've finally added a Super Scope to my collection. Back on the hunt, and here we had some Witcher Gwent cards. Now, I had to try and remember if I owned this set or the other set. Now, unfortunately, it's the other set, Blood and Wine, I'm still looking for, because honestly, playing Gwent in the real world is super cool. Yes, it's cool playing it within The Witcher, but playing Gwent in the real world it just hits differently. It's super cool, just like these NES games. Even more Nintendo cardboard here, some real heavy hitter N64 games, including Nuclear Strike, an incredible game, some really good SNES games, including that Indiana Jones game, which looks super cool, but it does command a very, very high price. And you may have noticed I still haven't picked anything up here. I was having a look for the Master System games, because the artwork on these is absolute fire. Very glad I picked this game up a couple of years ago, because this one is getting super expensive, but trust me, it is a super cool game. If you enjoy your side-scrolling shooting games, kind of like R-Type, you owe it to yourself to play that one. Even though it is getting more expensive, I would definitely recommend picking that one up. Heading through some more Mega CD games, this is a game that I need to pick up at some point. WWF Rage in the Cage. I have nearly every single WWF and WWE game ever released, and this is one that's on my radar. It is one of the most expensive wrestling games I still need to add to my collection, but trust me, I will add it to my collection in the future. Some really cool Mega CD games here, including this one, Jurassic Park, quite possibly my most wanted Mega CD game, because again, I'm a massive fan of Jurassic Park, and I want to have every Jurassic Park game in my collection. Here we go then. I have looked all day, and I'm finally going to pull the trigger. I was looking for the Super Star Wars games for the SNES, and this is the rarest of the 3 here, Return of the Jedi, and I guess we are working our way backwards, because I checked on the CX website. This game is hard to get, and this thing was in absolutely mint condition. Like, trust me, mint. Stick around to the end of this video for the pickups to see the condition of this thing. It is unbelievable. I actually thought this was a fake cartridge. It's in that good a condition, and as it's the rarest of the 3 of the Super Star Wars games, I was super happy to cross this one off the list, and I even managed to get it £5 cheaper than the sticker price. It just goes to show it always pays to ask. It was a fantastic price to begin with, and get that £5 off just made it even sweeter. Now, I was very close to picking up 2 games directly in a row with Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the arcade game for the NES. Absolutely iconic silver artwork, I did pass today, but definitely one that's very high on my radar, as much like the wrestling games and the Jurassic Park games and the Star Wars games, I want every TMNT game.
I think they just want for In Excess.
That's it, In Excess, because that one's not too bad, is it?
Yeah.
But that's right, folks. That is a £200 crisscross music video maker for the Mega CD. Definitely one of the craziest and highest priced things I've seen all day. And would you believe it? The next door we have not one but two, as in the other two Star Wars games which I need for the Super Star Wars trilogy. Now, I was looking at Empire Strikes Back because we're randomly working backwards when my eyes were caught with this. The Mega Drive 32X, again, boxed and complete, and for £250, that was a really good price. And would you believe it, folks? Another one, another Super Star Wars. This time it was missing the manual, so I am looking for these games boxed and complete, because honestly, half the battle now is just finding the manual. You can put 10, 15, even £20 on top just for finding a manual separately for these games. So honestly, going forward now, with most retro, I'm just looking for boxed and complete, because it is going to get harder and harder to find these manuals, and I would just rather pay the higher price once and be done with than trying to hunt down these manuals, because honestly, half of the joy of boxed games for me is sitting and reading the manual. Here we have it then, folks, the absolute pinnacle of gaming markets, exactly what these gaming markets are about. This kind of caliber of selection of retro. It's just banger after banger after banger. It's just boxed, complete, absolute heavy hitters. It's just an absolute dream, and the kind of stuff, just to take one of these games away, is just, it would just be the crown in anyone's retro game collection. Now, I love random peripherals for consoles, and it doesn't get much more random or greater than the Power Glove for the NES. Yes, this is a Japanese version of the Power Glove, but oh, back in the day, that was peak. That was what everyone dreamed of having with their NES, even though supposedly it's terrible. I have never used one, but it must be so cool. Another Game Genie there, once again, unfortunately not for the Mega Drive. We've got some absolutely fantastic bits here, including, coming up in a minute, if this had been the PAL version, I'd have been tempted, Lethal Enforcers, because that is one of the greatest light guns ever made. Now, when it comes to game collecting, I'm a massive fan of the Pokemon franchise, and I have managed to pick up a lot of these Pokemon games over the years, and I've picked up most of these big collector's editions for the 3DS, and I can never remember which one it is I'm missing. I haven't got a box copy of this one, Pokemon Pinball, £50. That isn't actually too bad, but here's the thing, with Pokemon games, they are getting more and more expensive all the time, and honestly, I probably need to fill those gaps in my collection. And what better place than a gaming market? Now, here's something you don't see every day, a £75 Nintendo Wii game. But with only 3,000 copies available, Shakedown Hawaii is definitely a very, very rare Wii game. And some really rare games in general on this stall. Some really, really good stuff. Some good Switch games, PlayStation 1, and some really nice handhelds. Just before we left, I couldn't resist going back and having just one last look at his Super Star Wars The Empire Strikes Back. One day it will be mine. I was gutted I couldn't take this copy away today because it was in incredible condition, but hopefully next time we grab it. So there we have it then, folks. That was Leeds video game market. What an absolutely incredible day it had been. Well worth the early start, well worth the long drive, and honestly, I had seen some things which I never thought I would see, and honestly, I may never see again. That was the first of hopefully many gaming markets this year, and I couldn't believe as we were leaving, the queues were still coming in. Now, let's take it back to the games room for them pickups. Here we are then, back from the Leeds video game market, and yes, it was absolutely incredible. It was such a great time hunting with friends, meeting some of you fans, and of course picking up some awesome items for my collection. Here's the thing, when it comes to hunting at video game markets, I'm looking for the weird and the wonderful, the rare and the unusual, the kind of things that you can only find at these big gaming markets such as Leeds video game market. And my first pickup is a strange one because I didn't pay anything for this. When I picked up my next item, they asked me if I'd like a bag, and honestly, it's big, it's bulky, I needed a bag, but I never expected I was going to get this OG Xbox promotional plastic bag. This is double-sided. It's a weird collectible, but this is from the launch of the OG Xbox console. I'm presuming you'd have gone into the shop, bought the console, and you'd have taken it home in a bag just like this. And this, for me, is the definition of weird and wonderful. Now, growing up, I never had a Super Nintendo, or the SNES as most people call it here in the UK. I only had a lowly Master System, and while I absolutely loved my Master System, I was very jealous of the SNES. That's because I used to like going to the arcades and playing light gun games. So when I saw this advert on the TV, there was one thing that I wanted more than anything. That was to be able to play light gun games in my own home. And yes, randomly looking back now, you could play light gun games on your Master System and even my friend's Mega Drive, but I wanted the Super Scope. Because honestly, what something-year-old boy wouldn't want a giant bazooka light gun? Now, this light gun came out in the early 90s. It has been almost 30 years of waiting, but at Leeds Game Market, I finally got myself my very own Super Nintendo Scope. Now, I have waited a long while for this day to finally add the Super Nintendo Scope to my collection. I've been waiting for something like this. For me, the perfect example of this boxed peripheral. I am such a fan of the weird and the wonderful things that we could plug into our consoles in the 90s. And for me, it's just how incredibly over the top this is why I had to have it. And it's just the iconic Super Nintendo artwork. It's that red, black and grey. It looks so cool. And once I opened this up at the gaming market, I knew I had to have this specific one. So without further ado, let's unbox this absolute beauty. And this is the thing, for something that is nearly 30 years old, this is a thing of absolute beauty. And here's the thing, inside it's in absolutely incredible condition. Just look at this. We have the instruction manual. We have everything you need inside here, including, of course, the Super NES Nintendo Scope 6 game. But this is the thing. With a lot of these consoles, they yellow. Consoles around this time and the peripherals, they yellowed really badly. But there is absolutely no yellowing at all here, except for the receiver, which I guess somebody just left out in the sun. That's why these consoles and peripherals change colour. It's UV damage that can be undone, but honestly, it's all about the scope for me. It's in incredible condition. It is fully boxed, and I still, to this day, have never played a game on the Super Scope. And honestly, I'm super excited, for lack of a better term, to jump into this one. This is exactly why I love the Super Scope. It's just absurd. Look at the size of it. But honestly, how cool does this look? I just think they do not make peripherals like this anymore. Yes, the PlayStation VR aim controller is pretty cool, but honestly, who doesn't want to have a rocket launcher they can fire in their light gun games? This, for me, is the definition of 90s cool and a 30-year dream of finally adding my own scope to the collection. Our final pickup from Leeds Gaming Market is carrying on that SNES theme. That's because then, now and forever, I've always been a massive Star Wars fan. But here's the thing, back in the day, me and my friends, we all had Sega consoles, and the Star Wars games, specifically the Super Star Wars games, were only available on the SNES. And I was desperate to play these games. And again, this is something I haven't managed until now, 30 years later. Now, of course, we have the trilogy of Super Star Wars games. And you saw I picked these up countless times throughout Leeds Gaming Market. But finally I did pick up what is actually the rarest of the free games from the trilogy. So I picked up this game from this stall, Dean Taylor from Retromania, so please go and check out his website. They had some absolutely incredible deals, and I managed to pick up this copy of Super Star Wars Return of the Jedi, not for the sticker price of £50. I managed to pick this copy up for £45. And here is the crazy thing. If you can even find a copy of this on the CX website, it is more money. It is more expensive to buy this game from CEX than it would have been for me to buy it from the gaming market. Now, I'm used to paying a premium for something like this because it looks brand new. I had to check to make sure this wasn't fake. This looks like it has never been opened, and inside is absolutely mint. This game genuinely looks like it has never been opened until I opened it. It must have sat somewhere just for years. Like, look at the crispiness of this manual. It's in absolutely fantastic condition. The cartridge, of course, is in absolutely incredible condition. And here is my favourite part. If you played any of these 16-bit games back in the day, you'll know you needed these. The cheat codes for level selects, because these games were tough as nails. And honestly, as I go on to play this game, I'm definitely going to be needing these cheat codes. There we have it then, folks. That was Leeds Gaming Market. Hopefully the first of many gaming markets that I get to visit over the course of 2024. I already have my eyes peeled for both the London and Doncaster gaming markets, but let me know in the comments down below any gaming markets coming up in your area, as honestly, I want to travel to as many as possible over the course of 2024 and try and find more weird peripherals, and especially the other two Super Star Wars games to add to my collection. That's because, if for no other reason, with CX raising the price of their box games coming complete, gaming markets have slowly becoming the best place to find some of these absolutely mint retro bangers. And trust me, if the games are out there, I'm going to find them. I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you did, hit that like button, subscribe, and as always, keep playing the game. See you all soon.